Good morning, class. Today we are continuing with the fur trade. Last week we talked about the different key terms. So let's go over those key terms real quick. Who remembers what a profit is? Katie.
The money made after all the costs are.
Yeah, the money that you make after you take out all the costs for whatever it is that you sell. So if you're selling a video game, how much did that video game cost you? The profit is what is left over. A resource, Izzy?
A source that is useful for something.
Yeah, it's a useful material, something useful for you. A fur trader, it's kind of an easy one. It's a person who's trading the furs, right? Fur trader trades furs, makes sense. The pelt. What is a pelt? Katie?
The skin and the fur from the animal.
Yeah, it's the skin with the fur still on it. So it's not just the hide, which would be turned into leather. It still has the fur on it. So the pelt has the fur. What did we learn about a hunter? Nathan?
They're usually men and they usually hunt all day.
Yeah, they're usually men. And it was their job. They hunted all day long. Every day. That was their job. That's what they did day in and day out. A guide. Nick?
A guide is someone who shows them where to go, or a person who guides the voyagers to go ahead.
Yeah, the guide is the person who knows the area. They know the land. So they can take somebody new to the area and show them how to get from where they're at to where they need to go. If they hit a river, they know where it's a safe place to cross the river. They know where the trails are through the forests and the woods. What about an interpreter? Caitlin?
A person who translates for people who speak different languages.
Yeah, the interpreter is the translator. So we had all the Europeans coming over. We have the American Indians. They all speak their own language. So an interpreter knows several different languages and can tell people what the other person's saying in their language. Who's a clerk? Nathan?
Someone who manages the day-to-day business.
Yeah, the person kind of in charge of the trading post. They manage what's happening from day to day. And the voyager. What does the voyager do? Izzy?
The person that brings stuff from one place to another.
Yeah, they bring the goods from one place to another, oftentimes by canoe. So I was using the analogy of a truck driver, how they bring stuff across the country on the trucks. The voyager would bring the goods, those pelts, from place to place using their canoe. They would use the waterways, the rivers, and the lakes. All right, so chapter 5 starts on page 73, the fur trade. The fur trade brought American Indians and Europeans together as trading partners in Minnesota and other parts of North America. Many people were involved in this trade over the course of several hundred years. Explore the roles and relationships of the people involved in the fur trade and the seasonal nature of the work. We talked on Friday about how it was seasonal, and when we were talking about the Ojibwe, they traded in the summertime. They're not going to go hiking out to the trading posts in the middle of winter when a blizzard could hit. So it was seasonal. They had to go when it was safe for them to be able to travel. Trade is a part of every culture. Traders bring goods from a place where they are abundant to a place where they are scarce. Before Europeans came to North America, American Indian traders traveled on the waterways, visiting distant villages and exchanging goods. A chunk of copper might be traded for a bunch of sharp arrowheads, or maybe for a buffalo robe. Sometimes people traded for new kinds of food or a new type of seed that would grow better. At times, they gave special goods to a neighboring group in order to befriend them. Trade provided tools and materials that made life better. Trade was a major part of American Indian life. The trade network connected American Indians from all across North America. In modern-day Minnesota, archaeologists have uncovered special types of flint from North Dakota, copper from around Lake Michigan, and seashells from the ocean. Traders brought these materials from distant places long before Europeans came to North America. In most places, people traded things they had for goods they could not get themselves. In places that used money, such as Europe, trade had a different purpose. Goods such as spices from Asia, or the goal of most European trade was to make money. Goods such as spices from Asia, gold from Africa, or furs from North America could be sold for a lot of money in Europe. Rich Europeans were willing to pay high prices for these rare items. This meant that traders could make a profit. European traders could use that profit to buy things they could not afford otherwise. So in Europe, it was about how much stuff can we get? How much money can I make? How much goods can I collect? That is not the lifestyle that we've been learning about with the Dakota and the Ojibwe. In Europe, making a profit is what would matter the most in trading business. In North America, the Ojibwe and Dakota traded for things that they wanted or needed, not to make a profit. These two worlds, European and American Indian, met in what we now call the fur trade. So think about the Dakota and the Ojibwe. They have a shirt, they wear that shirt until it's too small or it falls apart. If it just becomes too small, they pass it on to somebody else. In Europe, it was, is it the coolest shirt? Is it the newest shirt? I want more. It wasn't, do I need it? It was, I want, I want, I want. So they want the newest, they want the best. Kind of how our world here in America is today. Ooh, there's um, a new 18 or not 18, a new Apple phone came out. I want the newest phone. I don't want the old phone. I want the new phone. So it's about trying to get the newest. Not do I need it? It's because you want what is new. So the very different worlds are going to start colliding. Beginnings of exploration and trade. Many Europeans came to North America to find new resources that they could gather and sell for a profit back in Europe. In the late 1500s, French explorers and fishermen came to the Atlantic coast of what is now eastern Canada. They found a place with people, with timber, and with animals, including beavers, mink, and otters. Europeans prized these animals for their fur, which was used to make coats and hats. European explorers and missionaries. Many, but not all, of the first Europeans to venture into a region now called Minnesota were fur traders. Some were explorers in search of fame and adventure. Others were missionaries who wanted native people to give up their religions in favor of Christianity. Explorers Radisson and Groseilliers were among the first to arrive in the region. They probably ventured into the region during the 1650s. So that's almost 500 years ago. In 1680, two Frenchmen and a Catholic priest from Belgium named Louis Hennepin traveled up the Mississippi River into the lands of the Dakota. Hennepin later wrote a book about his adventures. His wildly exaggerated stories made him famous and sparked Europeans' curiosity about the upper Mississippi River Valley. So we have here some names that are familiar to us. Hennepin, there's Hennepin County, there's Hennepin Avenue in the middle of Minneapolis, named after Louis Hennepin. So a lot of times they're the names that we have up in Minnesota and Wisconsin, they might be American Indian names, those Ojibwe names that we talked about, Dakota names. They could be named after these early explorers. And also, I just want to point out the two different groups that were coming in. Were they doing what was good for the American Indian lifestyle? So think about that. We had the fur traders coming in. They're wanting to buy, and get all of this stuff. Very different culture than what the American Indians were living. And then we have the missionaries coming in saying, your religion, your spirituality is not any good. You need to change to mine. As Christians, we would love for everybody to be Christian and to believe in Jesus Christ as our Savior. But if you don't believe in it, it doesn't make you a bad person. They wanted to change the American Indians' lifestyle. They're trying to change their spirituality, trying to change how they view, how they trade, how they viewed having things. So it was bringing in lots of differences than what they were used to. So in the 1600s, French traders came to trade with American Indians. In exchange for furs, the Frenchmen offered blankets, jewelry, and useful metal goods such as knives, kettles, guns, and needles. The native people thought they were getting a bargain. So did the French. Before long, this exchange of goods grew into a big business. European traders were traveling farther inland in search of new sources of furs. By the early 1700s, fur traders had started setting up trading centers around the Great Lakes and the lands of the Dakota and the Ojibwe. And we can see there's the gun there, that guns like this were called trade guns because they were made specifically to trade with native people. I want, you want. The fur trade thrived because Europeans wanted things that the American Indians had, and the American Indians wanted things that the Europeans had. Many Dakota and Ojibwe wanted European goods. Cloths made of woven fabric were comfortable and required less work than making leather clothing. Think about what they had to do to use the hide of the animal to turn it into clothing. First, they had to take the fur off. They had to scrape that pelt. Then they had to tan the hide to get it so it was dried out and ready to be used to make the clothing with. Then they had to sew it. And leather is thick. It's not easy to sew that leather. So this was a long process. And the Europeans brought in fabric that is easy to work with, easy to use, and it saved them a lot of time. So the American Indians wanted this fabric. Colorful glass beads provided a new way to decorate leather moccasins and bags. Brass and tin kettles were durable and made cooking easier. Remember, they were using woven baskets or the hides to hold the water. So the new brass, the new metal, would last so much longer. So it helped make their lives better because it would last longer. Red dyes provided new ways to decorate hides and clothing. Many of the Dakota and Ojibwe found that these and other goods, such as axes and guns, made life simpler. So think about how much easier it was to hunt when you had the better weapons to hunt with. So the American Indians got a lot out of this trading. The Europeans also got things from the trades. The Europeans wanted pelts, especially from beavers. Hats made with beaver fur were considered symbols of the rich and powerful in Europe. People there were willing to pay a lot of money for them. Beavers had been hunted so much in Europe that they were almost extinct. So people prized the beaver hide so much that there was hardly any left in Europe. And now there's America, which is full of beavers. So they're like, oh, a new source for us to get to make these hats to show that we are the rich and powerful. Hat makers turned to fur traders who were working in North America. Skilled hunters and trappers, the Dakota and Ojibwe could supply the Europeans with the pelts they wanted. So you can see there's that necklace of the glass beads. The beads don't look the same because they were made by hand. This was before they had the machines to make them all the exact same shape and size. So they look different because they were handmade. More than furs. Besides the valuable furs, European traders needed food, labor, and tools, things that made living in the wilderness possible. French and British traders traveled long distances from the east coast of North America to set up trading posts each year in Ojibwe and Dakota lands. The Europeans could not carry enough food to last through the winter, so they traded with native people for wild rice, meat, and maple sugar. They also traded for canoes and hired Ojibwe or Dakota guides to help them navigate the miles of twisting rivers and trails. The Europeans also needed interpreters to help the traders communicate with the Dakota and Ojibwe. Without the support of their American Indian trading partners, European traders could not have survived, let alone made a profit. So it was more than just getting those pelts. They needed to get a lot of different things from the Native Americans. Okay, so the Europeans got a lot from the American Indians. They got um, the actual goods that they were trading, those pelts. They also got the interpreters and the guides to help them be able to navigate in this new area. They got canoes, so they got the food to be able to live there. So they were getting so much from the American Indians. So it was more than just the fur that was involved in this business. Beaver hats from about 1550 to 1850 was the fashion of European men and women to wear felt hats. The finest and most expensive felt hats were made of beaver fur. The fur was cut off of the skin, soaked, and pressed into beaver felt. Beaver fur is both soft and durable. It stands up well to wind and rain and to rough handling. But the beaver hat was more than a useful head protector. It was a symbol of social status. Wealthy and powerful people from the European ruling classes wore these hats almost everywhere they went. Working class people could not afford such things. So if you were wearing a hat, it was showing that you were rich, that you were more powerful, and it was a status symbol. So it wasn't just to keep your head warm, it was to show off that you were among the elite. Jocelyn.
It kind of reminds me of the Titanic with like the first class, second class, third class. How
Yes.
third class was always like acting like they were the best just because they had more money and they were in first class.
Yep. The movie Titanic definitely shows off these differences. It was this way in the 1600s. It was that way at the beginning of the 1900s when the Titanic is. It's still that way today. People have their status symbols. They have the Jaguar that they're going to drive, or the fancy cars. They have things that show it's. Do you need this $100,000 car, $200,000 car? No. A car is a car. It gets you from point A to point B. The reason that you get these super expensive cars is to show off that you have the money to do so. So it's not a need that you have the most expensive things. Just like it wasn't needed to have these expensive beaver hats. Any kind of hat would keep your head warm. Izzy.
Someone could live in like a really just average house, but they could still be really rich. They're just not showing that.
Yes. Yes. The business of trading. We're going to read 2 more pages than what I had planned for today. So we're reading 78 and 79 also. The business of trading. In Europe, people exchanged goods and services for money. European businessmen formed companies such as the Northwest Company in order to profit from the fur trade. Company owners and investors, those who put their own money into a company to help it grow, became wealthy by acquiring furs from American Indians in North America and selling those furs in London and Paris. These companies traded with many native groups at trading posts all around the Great Lakes and across Canada. The business connections of fur trade companies stretched across the globe. The companies bought goods from around the world to trade with the American Indians. They purchased beads from businesses in Italy and Germany. Iron tools and cloth came from France and Britain. Special red dyes were brought in from China and India. Because the American Indians did not use money, European fur traders developed different ways to buy furs from them. Sometimes the fur trade was a simple matter of exchange. I'll give you this, you give me that. So you just exchange your goods. Often, though, it was more complicated because each group had different traditions and ways of doing things. Traditions such as generosity, gift giving, and kinship were important to Native people. European traders used these traditions to support business, often giving presents to strengthen relationships with the Native trading partners. Sometimes they married Ojibwe and Dakota women to create kinship ties. When a trader did this, his wife's relatives often became his best customers. Marriage to a trader gave the woman's relatives easier access to desirable European goods. So it wasn't just about trading, the exchanging, I'll give you this, you give me that. They developed those relationships. So they might have they might have given those gifts because we know generosity was a big value for both the Dakota and the Ojibwe. So you haven't seen somebody for all winter, you see them for the first time, you give them a gift. They're going to want to come back to you because you're being kind to them. Developing those family ties, those kinship ties, marrying into the family to strengthen your relationships. You're going to go to the person that you're related to instead of a random stranger. So it's developing those kinships so they have those customers, they have the people to trade with. Worldwide trade then and now. You might not think you have anything in common with the people who are part of the fur trade. Consider this. Your closet is filled with clothes that have been produced all over the world. Then, as now, people who lived across the world from another were interested in trading goods with each other. So when you go home tonight, find a piece of clothing made in another country. Where did it come from? How far away is that place? I know that at Epiphany, we had a lot of our uniform pieces we could get from Land's End. And I know that the red shirts from Land's End came from Thailand and from Vietnam. And I know this because my son had an allergic reaction to the red dye that they used in those companies, in their factories, and he would get a rash wherever that red dye shirt touched him. Even if I washed that shirt 15 times, he would still get a rash. So he had to wear the white shirts. So I know that a lot of our uniform pieces come from places over in Asia, which is across the world. It is on the other side of the globe from us. You might be driving in cars. I drive a Honda, which comes from over in Asia, across the world from us. So a lot of the stuff that we have in our houses, in our closets, in our garages, they come from across the world. So that it's different type of trade, but it's still trading. They started back during the fur trade time. Kira. A lot of things are made in China. With that, I'm going to say goodbye to our friends at home, and we hope that you are doing well.